Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Shemel Shai. I want to give double honors to the apostles of great milestone and do rule well. Salutation to the men of the Upland Sensei elect. This is brother Marcus out here in Trend. I just want to do a quick edification. I'll make this real quick for the elect's sake concerning the name Israel. Alright. And it's taken from this verse and chapter here, Genesis 32 and 28. It says, "And he said, Thy name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast power with God and with men, and has prevailed." Alright? And we know names, well, in these modern times, names just sounds good. You just give anybody a name just because you like how it sounds. But back in the ancient times, these names were more impacting. They had weight to it. Alright? Just like Abraham, his name was changed from Abraham, exalted father, to Abraham, because he would have lived up to that name, being a father of nations. Alright? Isaac got the name because his mother laughed, and that is why his name is Yatazakak. He laughed. Alright? And all the tribes of Israel, they got their names because of an event. It wasn't random names. Their names were, strategic. Like Judah, he shall praise the Lord because his mother praised the Lord because she had a son. God, he said, is that true? Because she said, no, my father, my son, my husband will love me. Alright? Issachar, because she hired Jacob for the night with the mandrake. That is why his name is He is Hired. Alright? So names had weight in the ancient time. And the name Israel is no different from that. Alright? Because when you go into the scriptures, the reason he is named, first of all, his name was Jacob, Yaquab. And his mother's name was Rebecca, Rabaka. Alright? And when you look at what they would have done in the later days, you would have understood why his mother's name was Rabaka and his name was Yaquab. Because Yaquab, as we know, it means supplanter. Alright? And Rabaka, his mother's name, means ensnarer. And they ensnared and supplanted Esau and took his birthright. Alright? So now his name is no more ensnarer because he gonna live up to something else. He was wrestling with the angel, and the angel said, look, your name not gonna be supplanter anymore. It's gonna be he that prevails, or he that has power, he that has strength. Alright? Because he lived up to that name. It's not just simply, you are a prince of the Most High. Because the word prince, only in the modern terms, the word prince means son of a king. The word prince originally had different meanings. It meant, head, chief, ruler. So you didn't have to be, just like when you go and you look up the word, all the princes of Israel, all the chiefs of the heads of Israel. Sometimes when you look up the word prince, it also goes back to father. You see the word father there. When you go in it, you will see the word prince. Alright? Because it just means chief or head, just like the father is a head of a house. Alright? So when the angel was telling Jacob, look, your name not gonna be supplant anymore. It's gonna be power, because you wrestle with me and you have power. You got a power from the Most High. So you have power. That's why your name is he that contends, or he that has power with the Most High. Alright? Now, when you read, it says what? It says, thy name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast power with God and men. Now, in all the other versions, you would not see the word there, prince. This was added, and it could prove it. You always say majority rules. Alright? Now, when you go down here, just to prove prince originally was not in that scripture, the Strong's here, H8280, is not the Strong's for prince, but actually the Strong's for power. All right? So when you go on it,
Strong's H8280, Sarah.
it says to contend, have power, contend with, and just says has power, and that is the word that was used. This is the Strong's for power, not prince. And you will see when you go down here, the 2 times it was used in the scriptures, it was used as power. It was used, the first time it was used, here it is, Genesis 32:28, proving that Strong's H8280 is not the Strong's for prince, but actually the Strong's for power. Here it is, for thou has power, Strong's H8280, the Strong's for power. Then you have it again in Hosea 12:3. It says, he took his brother by the heel in the womb, which he did, and by his strength, because he lived he got his name because of an action. He was literally in the act of wrestling with the angel, and he got the name because of that act. It says, and by his strength he had power with Yahweh. All right? So he got that power from the Most High. All right? It says, and by his strength he has power with God. So the Strong's for power is Strong's 8280. So it says that he has power with God. Yes, the Most High is a king, and we are his son. So therefore, we also going to have power like our Father. All right? That is why, figuratively, you could associate ruling as with a prince, because that is what a prince does. All right? So now when you go back, so as we see here, the Strong's H8280 is not the Strong's for prince, as we just proved, is the Strong's for power. When you go into Israel, all right, you have H410, which is Allah, and then you have what? H8280, which is to contend, have power, contend with, persist, exert oneself, persevere. All right? And that is where he got his name from, because he wrestled with the angel and he persevered. All right? He persevered. That is how he got that name. He lived up to that name, or he got that name because of, the act. Just like Samson, Shamash 1. All right? One of the definitions for Samson is sun, sunlight, window, east, but also battlement or shield. Now, when you look at the name Samson and you apply the name Samson to the character, what did he do? Why did he receive that name? He received that name because he was a shield and battlement, a protection for Israel, not just because Samson, Shamash means son. He was a battlement for Israel. All right? So, they lived up to the name. All right? They lived up to the name. Now, let me prove a different point. So, this here, that is Prince. That matter of fact, that wasn't even the Strong's for Prince. It was the Strong's for power. So, the Strong's, I'll go back to it again. Genesis 32:28. All right? I'll go back to it real quick. All right? The Strong's H8280 is not the Strong's for prince, but the Strong's for power. See it here being used twice. The KJV translates Strong's H8280 in the following manner: power 2 times, and the 2 times it was used, Genesis 32:28. Here you have it. For as a prince thou hast power. If it was the Strong's for prince, it would have been next to prince. It's not next to prince, it's next to power. And you have it down here in Hosea. He had power with God. All right? And it's the same H8280 that was used in the name Israel, which proves that the name Israel goes back to he that has power with God. He has power with God. Let's put it like that. Because the name was translated as power, so you have power with God. Now, when you go to the book of Exodus, chapter 2 and verse 14, this is what it says. It says, and he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? It says, intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. So he says, who made thee a what? A prince and a judge. All right. Now, when you go to the word prince, you have the Strongs for the word prince here. And you know what the Strongs is?
Strong's H8269. Sayer.
Shah. And it says what? Prince, ruler, leader, chief, captain, official, captain, leader, vassal, noble, official under the king. All right. It says elders, patron angel, rulers of God, warden. All right. And when you go down, it will show you times when it was used. Here you have princes, you have the Strong's faith, you have captain, same Strongs, you have captain again, same Strongs. All right. So this word here was not used in Genesis chapter 32 and 28, meaning prince or ruler, to say he is the prince of God. This is not the word that was used. To go deeper into it, despite they have the same root meaning, they don't have the same finishing. Yes, they come from the same root, just like well, they both come from the same root. We see on top Sa, right? They both come from the same root. It says what? To act as a prince, ruler, contend. So there you have contend, have power, prevail over. So they both come from the same root. Yes. Prince, you have the word prince here. You did not see that in Strong's 8280. You saw what? Contend, have power, prevail over. All right. So yes, they come from the same root, but they don't have the same finishing meaning. To prove that Shah as prince, as Shah, as we have here in the example in Exodus 2:14, it's a noun. All right. It's a masculine noun. A noun is a naming word. All right. A noun is a naming word. This is just to prove that they don't have the same meaning. Now, when you go to Genesis chapter 32 and 28, because you saw the root of the both of them, they had the same root. They come from the same root, but they don't have the same meaning. Just as like the word rain. The word rain, rain from water that comes from the sky, but also the word rain also translates as down. Mata. Mata means down. Mata also goes back to rain. All right. So now when you go to the Strongs for power, because the H8280 here was not used as the Strong for prince. It was used as the Strongs for power. It is a what? A verb. A verb is an action word, because what he did, he contend, have power, contend with persist, exert oneself, to persevere. All right. When you go back to the Exodus, to the Genesis, my bad, no, not the Genesis, the Exodus chapter 2 and verse 14, and you go to prince, and you go to the root of it, it says what? To act as a prince, which prince, that is what princes rule. That is what prince also means in Genesis and Exodus chapter 2 and 14, but it does not mean to contend or have power. Those are characteristics of a prince. All right? Because that is why they came from the same root. But when they use in their perspective verses, they mean two different things. All right? They mean two different things. In Genesis chapter 32, he did not say, your name gonna be Yasharahla because you're a prince with the Most High. The word prince there does not even have a strong to it, because it was added in. All right, it was added in. H8280 in Genesis chapter 32, 28 was the Strong's for power. All right. Yes, they sound similar, but they don't have the same meaning. Let me show you a different meaning. Let me show you from a different example. All right. Like with Yahweh Shai. With Yahweh Shai. When Yahweh Shai was on the cross, what he said? He said, Alaya, Alaya. All right. And the people thought that he was praying to Elijah. Why? Because it sounds similar. Alaya is my God, and Alaya is God is power. God is my power. Difference in both of them, one has an H at the end saying Yahweh is power, or Yahweh is God. That is Alaya, or Elijah's name. Allah Yah. Yahweh is God. And what Yahweh Shai was saying is Allah Yah. Yah at the end of Allah is my God, my power. So this is why they thought Yahweh Shai was praying to Elijah, but he wasn't. They sound alike, but they're not the same. Right? Here's another example. So it says, this is Genesis chapter 29 and 17. It says, Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well favored. All right. Let's go to beautiful. It says what? Yapa, fair, beautiful, handsome. All right. Fair, beautiful, and handsome. And when you go to Genesis chapter 9 and verse 27, it says what? God shall enlarge Japhet. Now, before we thought that Japhet actually meant beautiful, but then the apostles came and updated it, showing that Japhet doesn't mean beautiful, it means enlarged or open. Now, do they sound similar? Yes, they do, because in the Hebrew, beautiful is Yapa, and in the Hebrew, Japhet is Yapat. Sound similar. Come from the same root also, but have different meanings. All right. Now, when you go to Google, I ask the question here. It says, does Japhet and beautiful mean the same in Hebrew? It says not exactly, but they are closely related. The name Japhet is rooted in the ancient word for beauty or beautiful, but it has a completely different meaning. The name Japhet, depending on the root, the name Japhet has two primary meanings, just like Shara. Just like Shara and Shah, they come from the same root. And the root means prince, ruler, to rule, power, contend, exert oneself, or persevere. All right? So just like Japhet and beautiful, they come from the same root, but they don't mean the same thing when they branch down. All right? It says, beautiful, handsome is frequently linked to the Hebrew root yapa, which translates to beauty or to be beautiful. In this context, it roughly means may he be beautiful. Example 2, it says expansion, enlargement. Many biblical scholars interpret, such as the famous commentator Rashi, prefer the root related to the Aramaic meaning to extend or to enlarge. This aligns with Noah's prophetic blessings in Genesis 9:27. God shall enlarge Japhet. So Japhet got that name. He lived up to the name because he would have been enlarged. Just like Jacob, when he was wrestling the angel, he got that name because you contend with man and angel, and you have power. So with the Most High, you have power. He lived up to that name because he got that name in the middle of the act of what he was doing. In the middle of the act. Let's go to ChatGPT. I ask the question here. Matter of fact, no. You know what? Let me ask the other question. Does Prince, just now, screen a little wet. Does Prince in G-E-N-E. Genesis 32:28 and EXO, Exodus 2:14 have the same meaning. It says they are closely related in Hebrew meaning, but they are not the exact same word form in the two verses. All right, Genesis 32:28, the word translated as prince in many English Bibles comes from shara, the root shara, meaning to struggle, contend. Also connected to ruling, having authority, acting like a prince, because they closely related. That is a characteristic of a prince, just like I made the reference with rain. Rain, the Hebrew word for rain is mata, but what does rain do? It falls. So is an action closely correlated, just like shamash. Shamash means sunlight. Shamash also means east. Where does the sun come from? The east. Shamash also goes back to window. What comes through your window? Sunlight. All right? So they're closely related, but when used in particular verses, you have to know how to apply it. Jacob got his name because of the act he was doing. With the Most High, he has power. The Strongs for prince in Genesis 32:28 was added in as could prove from the other verses, because it does not even have a Strongs. And the other verses, they never even used it because it wasn't there. It says, thou hast prevailed and has power with God. When you go to the Hosea chapter 12 and 3, it tells you exactly what he did. He took his brother by the heel, and by his strength, he prevailed and has power with God. That is a perfect example that the name Israel goes back to he has power with God. All right? It says, so the idea in Genesis 32:28, it says you have sarita with God. All right, it says you have struggled, content, and prevailed, and the word carries a sense of exerting authority. That is why the word used in Genesis 32:28 is a verb. All right, an action was taking place. Exodus 2:14, the word translated a prince is what? Prince, ruler, official, shah. All right, meaning a ruler, an official with authority, a governor, a governing leader. It says, so do they mean the same thing? Yes and no. Same root family, idea of rule, authority, leadership, different grammatical forms. Genesis 32:28, verb form, you have prevailed, extended like a ruler. Exodus 2:14, noun, a ruler or prince. Bottom line, they share the same underlining Hebrew concept of authority and rulership, but Genesis emphasizes struggling plus prevailing authority. Exodus uses the plain noun ruler or prince. So they are related in meaning and root idea, but not identical words, just like Yapa and Yapat. Same root, but different meanings. All right, so I hope it was edifying. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Shemi Shai. I want to give double honor to the apostles of great mercy who do rule well. This is Brother Marcus out here ensuring that I say Shalom and stay strong. Shalom.